Hello and welcome to my easy to understand guide to Tomb Raider Anniversary and Representation. This video is going to be particularly relevant for you if you are studying AQA A-Level Media Studies, as this video game is a current set text on that specification. For this specification, you need to have looked at various extracts from the game, but you also need to have looked at the video game cover itself. So I'm going to refer to lots of different elements within this video. If you have a look at the cover of the game, you can see that Lara Croft herself as the protagonist is represented as quite powerful. She's got two guns and holsters for those guns, which suggests that perhaps she's quite violent and aggressive, not afraid to use them. It paints her as the typical kind of hero that we often see within media products. This is a role that is often typically played by male characters, and so having a female character represented this powerfully in the past has often been very unconventional. She's since become famous for being a very strong, powerful protagonist within a game as a female character. However, she does conform to a lot of other representations of women that we see in the media. She is very sexualized. So you can see through the use of her revealing clothing, she's got a maximum amount of skin on display. The material that she's wearing, the clothes that she's wearing are not particularly protective. It's not like she's wearing armor or anything like that. Her body pose is designed to display both her bottom and her boobs. So, displaying parts of her body that might appeal to a heterosexual male target audience. She's the only character on the cover, and obviously her name is the title right above her in the centre, and so this does connote that she's very important and powerful and dominant as a character. You can see from some of the other marketing promotional shots released for the game that she is very, very sexualised in all of these images as well. In the actual game itself, you can have a look at various clips of the gameplay on YouTube, but in the game itself, she's independent. She doesn't travel with anyone else for the most part. She's on her own. She explores, she goes to dangerous places, and she takes part in quite a lot of risky activities. You know, there's rock climbing and jumping and diving and all sorts of other things. So this paints her as very independent, very skilled, very physically strong. She has to solve a lot of puzzles within the game as well. So there's this idea that she's also very intelligent, very clever. She is not your typical damsel in distress character. There's no kind of Princess Peach, oh no, I've been kidnapped again moments. She is the protagonist. She is the one that is there to, kill people and beat the boss at the end. The boss in this game is called Natla. No idea how to pronounce that, I'm afraid. And she's female as well. So again, representing women in positions of power. In the 90s, when the original Tomb Raider game came out, there was this kind of impact of, some more feminist ideas that were coming in the media. We had things like Buffy the Vampire Slayer and the Spice Girls, female characters, strong female dominant women in the media. And so perhaps explaining why Lara Croft was quite a strong, dominant female character, representing the kind of historical context of that sort of 90s period. She is a white upper-class character, and this idea of a white explorer going to strange and foreign lands, killing local people, is quite a post-colonialist representation of ethnicity, this idea of the kind of white saviour, and the representation of people from ethnic minority backgrounds as being dangerous or scary or villainous. Perhaps this helps the game to target a Western market. A lot of the franchise is very popular within UK and America. So perhaps this does help to target a sort of mainstream Western audience. It does perhaps challenge representations of class, upper class people, in particular upper class white people, not normally represented as being kind of aggressive and violent. So this idea that she's going, exploring adventures and, she's very physical, perhaps is unconventional for representations of ethnicity and class in that respect. Whereas representations in other media products are often quite set by the producers, in a video game the audience has control. So if an audience is playing Lara Croft, it means that the representations of her often impact the identity of the players themselves. They feel powerful, they feel strong, they feel dominant as a result of playing her as a character. It's important to understand how technology might have had an impact upon representation within the game. When the original Lara Croft game came out, the technology was obviously a lot more limited than it was now. And even then, the technology they used, it pushed the boundaries. You know, when it came out, a lot of people were really impressed by these graphics, which I know is probably hard to understand, and you know, seeing the graphics that a lot of audiences are used to now. But these kind of like polygons that they used to use, the kind of shapes that game designers used to use to actually design the characters, they were really hard shapes to make a character identifiable. It was really hard to give somebody really detailed facial expressions. It was very hard to get, you know, lines of clothing and things like that. So in order to make it clear whether a character was male or female, they would often exaggerate bodily features in order to make it clear whether they were male or female. So a male character, they would often give very broad shoulders to, because that triangular shape was quite easy to make. And that would make it really clear that it was a male character. With Lara Croft, to make it clear that she was a female character, the game designers really exaggerated the shape of her breasts and her bum, and that made it really identifiable she was a female character. Now, that is obviously not the only reason they did it. It also sexualizes her and appeals to a male audience, and it became an iconic representation of a character over the years. But it does explain why the features of her, physical features of her, might have been so exaggerated at the very start of the franchise, because as the franchise actually continued, the game makers were able to pare down those characteristics and use more subtle technologies to identify elements of her personality and appearance. Tomb Raider Anniversary was a reworking of the original game. There were lots of players who would want to buy this game out of nostalgia, so they really tried hard to stay true to the original, representing Lara Croft the same way she was represented in the original game. And that again explains some of the reasons for her sort of very hyperbolic body and, you know, potentially kind of lower graphic quality. Traditionally, the game industry itself, in terms of producers, designers, etc., has been a male-dominated industry, and that often explains why characters, including female characters, were often sexualized and drawn and animated from a male perspective. It's worth having a think about the representations of reality as well. We've already talked about how sort of unrealistic Lara Croft is as a character in terms of her body and the graphics, but have a look at the locations as well. They're actually incredibly detailed. Game designers and animators actually looked at real pictures. Some of them even visited real geographical locations, Egypt, Mexico, for example, to get details of what to put in the game. And it's these locations that really help to set the scene for an audience. There are cracks in the stone. There's granite and dust on the floor. You know, there's tiles that are broken, and it's all of these kind of small details that help to add to this illusion of reality, and often that helps to immerse a player in a game. So they try and make the game as realistic as they can with the technology they have at the time, because players tend to really like that idea of feeling as though they're in a real place. There are elements of Lara Croft that obviously are not particularly realistic, that are not just her body. So, for example, she can jump huge distances, she can run at super speeds, she can perform physical feats that would probably be impossible. So I guess that's to do with making the game more playable, more entertaining. So there are elements where it veers away from reality and more into a sort of hyper-real, exciting universe. And that's just because it makes the game more exciting to play. So the people who had originally played Tomb Raider 1 when it came out in 1996 and experienced these graphics would have been really quite impressed with the relative realism of the graphics in Tomb Raider Anniversary. And likewise, modern audiences who may have experienced graphics like this in the more recent Tomb Raider games may look back at Tomb Raider Anniversary and see the graphics as being particularly unrealistic. They may think that Tomb Raider Anniversary therefore lacks realism because they come from a more modern context. So that was my easy to understand guide to the representations within Tomb Raider Anniversary. Don't forget to check out my channel, more videos coming about Tomb Raider soon, as well as lots of other set texts, keywords and theories. If you would like a particular video that I don't already have, feel free to leave a little comment below. I do read them and I will add it to my list and see what I can do.